What makes a villain brutal? Their method, their scale, their power level? Welcome back, Nerd Squad. It's me, Amanda, and I think in general the answer to that question is a mix of all of the above. Who do you think is the most brutal villain in all of comics? And what do you think makes them so brutal? Let us know in the comments below, and let's jump into this list of the top 10 most brutal villains. Number 10, Anton Arcane. He loves that rot, let me tell ya. I realize that I don't really talk too much about Anton, and honestly that's a shame because he is really creepy, and I think a fantastic, albeit kinda stinky villain. Anton Arcane is the main antagonist for Swamp Thing. While Swamp Thing is the avatar of the green, representing all plant life on the planet, Anton has been the avatar of the rot, or the gray, representing the death and decay of all things. Anton isn't always the avatar of the gray, and the gray isn't always at odds with the green. But when Anton does happen to be representing the rot, you best believe that they are enemies. And you best believe Swamp Thing better watch out, because at one point Anton was part of a plot that literally eliminated him. And friends, before I move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, we got a villains playlist for you. You can check it out for even more good villain content. Some of my favorite things to talk about villains. Number 9, the Maker. The Maker is an alternate evil version of Reed Richards. He hails from the 1610 universe, the Ultimate Universe, where Reed ended up becoming a massive supervillain and being quite good at it besides. It's possible that this version of Reed showed us that Mr. Fantastic actually makes a better villain than he even does a hero, taking the mantle of the Maker. This alternate version of Reed Richards would later escape his universe and take up residence in the main reality of Earth 616 before ultimately making his way home once more. The Maker isn't just any old alternate of his nemesis Reed Richards, he's the most unbridled morally. This is basically Reed if you took away any moral code. He's willing to do most things that even other villains just simply aren't. Number 8, Blackfire. Blackfire is kind of like the evil version of Starfire herself. Blackfire, of course, is Starfire's much more villainous sister. The two sisters look quite similar, although Blackfire has black hair where Starfire's is red. Commander went on to become queen of her home world of Tamaran. For a long time, Coriander reviled Blackfire because Commander was the one responsible for her own enslavement. Yeah, Blackfire did that to her own sister. That is some pretty evil, pretty brutal stuff, I gotta be honest. While Cori would later forgive her sister and even fight alongside her, it's easy to see why I consider Blackfire to be such a brutal villain. I mean, even while Cori worked hard to forgive her sister and do all of that, this actually did not change Blackfire overnight, and she still reviled and even attempted to destroy Starfire for some time. Even though Starfire was like ready to let bygones be bygones, Blackfire was not, and she was the worst one in that relationship, honestly. Number 7, Sabertooth. Sabertooth is one of those villains who is even considered to be brutal by other villains. He's a loose cannon and does not discriminate when it comes to getting a chance to inflict pain on others, something he honestly immensely seems to enjoy, as we so evidently saw when he basically became the ruler in the pit in Krakoa, creating a version of hell in his own image. But also in the Avengers 1959 series, we get to see a retro team of much more brutal Avengers brought together by none other than Colonel Nick Fury. The team roster includes Sabertooth, Dominic Fortune, the Blonde Phantom, Kraven the Hunter, and Namora, as well as Fury, of course. During this series, one of the villainous teams our 1959 Avengers comes into contact with is known as the Ubermenschen. The Ubermenschen feature loyal former members of the Axis group in World War II. After being captured and interrogated, Fury basically passes all 4 of the female members off to Sabertooth to basically kill as he pleases. Also, you know it's bad when you're a villain and like other villains are like, ah. Number 6, Grail. Grail is the powerful daughter of Darkseid and the Amazonian assassin Myrna. Being that she is both Amazonian by birth and also a new god, she is extremely powerful. She has also been shown to possess magical abilities as well that even allow her to have some power over life and death, successfully bringing back her father Darkseid after he died. Initially though, Grail was actually born with her mother's hope that Grail would one day be the key to defeating Darkseid. However, there was also a prophecy that Grail would one day cause great destruction, with this prophecy putting her in danger shortly after she was born. Her mother Myrna gave birth to Grail at the same time that Hippolyta bore Princess Diana. Together, Myrna and her newborn were two of the first of the Amazons to ever leave Themyscira. Eventually, the prophecy connected to Grail would come true, with her teaming up with the Anti-Monitor initially in an attempt to defeat her father Darkseid. I think you can see where that would go with all the destruction and stuff, with her proving to be an extremely powerful villain in her own right, especially in her fight against Wonder Woman. Honestly, Wonder Woman versus Grail is like just so great. Number 5. Umar. Umar is the sister of the famous Dormammu. A lot of people know Dormammu, but not a lot of people know Umar, so I'm very happy that we get to talk about her today. I like talking about Umar. Like her brother, she is also extremely powerful and hails from the Dark Dimension. Although she too is a member of the Fall Team, their kind are not native to the Dark Dimension, but simply conquered the Dark Dimension, taking it over and making it their own dimension to rule. Dormammu actually became its true ruler, but really only because the fight to win the Dark Dimension and also trap the Mindless Ones had left his sister Umar in a weakened state. Umar and Dormammu are both members of the Fall Team, a race of beings known to be extremely powerful, energy-based beings made of basically pure magic. Umar herself has shown why you shouldn't mess with her even almost defeating her own brother at one point when the two were caught in a feud. Number 4. Upside Down Man. Upside Down Man has to be one of the most terrifying villains I have ever encountered in the comics. Seriously though. If he was adapted into live action, I do not think I would survive the sight of this villain. The Upside Down Man is a villain who first appeared in the second Justice League Dark volume from 2018 in issue number 1. He often threatens to devour our heroes, all of magic and all of reality, along with them both, peering out from the dark multiverse where he was originally contained. And you know how I feel about the dark multiverse. It is a scary place. Anything that comes into the dark multiverse and is like, this is where I'm from, I'm like, nope, I'm just gonna pass on that. That's creepy. Number 3. Nimrod. Nimrod has become even more intense in the last few years, managing to make the overall silly sounding name of Nimrod strike fear into the hearts of mutants and X-Men fans everywhere. Nimrod, despite often being associated with the idea of someone who is incompetent here in North America, is actually also a word that is defined in the dictionary as meaning a skillful hunter, just FYI. So if you think this name Nimrod sounds silly, I mean, you're not wrong, but it's also got a meaning that makes sense. That's definitely more the concept that Nimrod as a villain has become associated with. Ruthless hunter of mutants and humanity at this point. Number 2. Joker. Joker has proven time and time again that he is one of the most brutal villains in all of the DC universe, and perhaps also in all of comics at this point. He's definitely one of the most twisted villains we have over at DC, I would say. One of the prime examples of how brutal and terrifyingly insane Joker can be comes to us from Death of the Family. In this story, Joker ended up removing his face in order to reinvent himself. Needless to say, this didn't last forever, but it did last a lot longer than I would have ever expected it to, considering how long Joker's face was physically separated from his body, being cut off and basically stapled back on for a lot of the time. There was even actually a period where Joker just like fully lost his face. He did not have it, with it being physically separated from him. I think we thought he was dead at that time, but when you find out that he wasn't, it's like, wait, what's happening? It was a terrifying time, honestly, and I'm not really sure how Joker lived after doing this. I know the reason that we're kind of given in the comics is he was supposed to be immortal, but then that was disproven, so it's a weird thing. Really, he would have been opening himself up to all kinds of nasty infections with a wound that size that also never really fully seemed to ever close that I saw. Despite removing his face though, Joker would later recover and even reapply said face, eventually healing it back on, despite the fact that, to put it lightly, the face was not sanitarily stored in between, let's say. And even today, I feel like he doesn't even have any marks from when that happened. Does he have a scar? I don't know. Gotta look closer in the comics. Number 1. The Void. Sentry is his own greatest villain. For every part of the Sentry that is good, the Void, his dark alter ego, is the perfect mirror of darkness and brutality. When Sentry had to face his nemesis, he was actually just facing, basically, himself. I mean, literally, that's what's happening. The Void was known for being one of the greatest villains the Earth had ever seen, or at the very least, one of the greatest villains the Earth had ever seen. Without the Void, the Sentry cannot exist. At least that's what Bob was made to believe. While initially it was thought that the world was made to forget about the Sentry in order to protect the Earth from the Void, it was later revealed that the idea of the Void was placed into Reynolds' mind by none other than Mastermind. The Void likely only manifested because Mastermind made Bob believe that should the Sentry ever return, the devil would also appear and attack the world. Hence the manifestation of the Void. It was basically, you know, like the devil. The Void is a villain that the the Sentry has at times successfully beat. But as he is in essence representative of a part of Sentry's psyche that lives within him, even when it seems like Bob has beaten the Void for good, he still eventually does return and pops back up. Inner demons can sometimes be the hardest ones to overcome. Even when you think you've gone past them, sometimes they just rear their head again and you're like, oh, gotta deal with that. That's about it. Until next time, you stay nerdy, YouTube.